area here in northern Vermont where we have a historical logging industry, which is still happening, but it's more and more mechanized, so fewer and fewer jobs, and prices have been quite depressed. We have a strong dairy industry that's really suffering currently. It's fairly poor. A lot of people sort of piece together several jobs to make their living. And there's sort of a new renaissance of new value-added farming and food-based businesses here, and we are the growth industry in this area now. About 4 years ago in Vermont, this whole Locavore movement hit, and there was already a strong local eating ethic in Vermont, but having a word that kind of summed it up brought a whole new group of folks into the picture, and we just saw demand spike. And anybody in this sort of business in Vermont saw it spike, and we've just been trying to keep up with production ever since. Here we're standing in one of our greenhouses. We have about 1.5 acres, 60,000 square feet in greenhouses of all different types. The first one we built here is a wood pole frame structure that's cut from the local woods that we had used on some of our previous farms, and that's worked great. This is our highest tech greenhouse. It has a vent at the peak and it's heated, and it's really great for some things. And then we have 4 movable greenhouses that we move twice a year, and we move them so that we can get a greater amount of cropping out of the structure every year. In the past, we had to pull plants out of a greenhouse early in the fall in order to plant the hardy winter greens. Now we can keep our tomatoes and hot weather crops growing in the greenhouse through October, plant our hardy greens outdoors next door. Late October, we slide the greenhouse onto the new site. We grow great greens all winter, and we just maximize production out of the houses. And various crops pass through different greenhouses at different times. It's sort of like this big choreographed dance. But we have some key tools. We have a salad greens harvester. We used to do that all by hand. We have a potato and onion harvester that picks them up and puts it in bins for us that have really helped. We're a highly diversified farm. We grow 40 or 50 or 60 different types of crops, and then many varieties of all those crops. You know, we met with Deputy Secretary of Ag, Kathleen Merrigan, #2 at the USDA, and she is all about what we're doing here, and all about figuring out how to support it and help parts of the country that have none of this going on, get it going. We went to the White House garden. There hasn't been a garden at the White House since the 1800s. And it's also small, but the Obamas are eating from it every single day, year-round. And there's this great beehive right there, and it's all very visible, and it's just, to have that at the highest level, it's really changing things quickly, and it's really exciting, and I can't even envision what we're headed towards. Real change. If you can get more involved in a more local source of food, you can make some great friends, become more involved in your community, help support local business and your local landscape. That's a really important thing in some areas. You are likely to eat better food that's more nutritious. Local foods is more expensive, depending on what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to the cheapest food you can purchase and consume, it definitely is more expensive. There's a whole bunch of factors that are coming together to make this a non-point. And I think in 20 to 30 years, if not sooner, we're not going to be talking about it this way anymore. Local production is increasing in scale, so we're gaining some economies of scale. I can produce salad greens quite a bit more cheaply per pound now than I could 5 years ago when it was all by hand. That's one thing. As oil prices rise, which we saw happen dramatically a couple years ago, there was a point a couple years ago where our local co-op was paying more for California lettuce than they were for local lettuce. That had never happened before. Once that happens consistently, that changes everything. We spend less than any society ever has as a percentage of their income on nourishment. and look what we get for it. You know, super high obesity. The Army's now saying we're too fat to fight. We actually talked to some folks in DC from the Army who are interested in local production and better food because of this. You know, once the Pentagon starts thinking about better food and local food, then we're really getting somewhere, because that's where the bucks are. CSA, it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. It's a term that means lots of different things. There's lots of different variants of it. But the general concept is that a customer pays a certain amount of money for food, typically vegetables, but also meat and other products, up front, and then receives a certain amount of the food every week. Oftentimes, the customer is receiving whatever the farm has in production. The customer's not picking out what they're getting in a given week. So it's a concept that's really great for farms. You basically know what you're growing, you know how many customers you have, and you focus your energy on growing it and providing it to your customers. It's really important to understand, you know, what organic is. Organic means you can't use any synthetic pesticides or fertility products. And there's a bunch of other standards that you have to adhere to, but that's sort of the basics of it. Local typically means it's grown within 100 miles or 200 miles or, you know, some distance. Local is often organic, but certainly not always. And oftentimes you might be in might have to make a choice between buying local food that's not organic or some organic food from really far away. Know your farmer. That's what it comes down to, you know. Buy it local, know who you're buying it from, learn about their practices, learn about what you're comfortable with, what you aren't. Learn about if you want to buy your apples from a guy who uses a synthetic pesticide twice a year, or some organic apples from New Zealand. You know, there's lots of decisions to be made there. I'm a fan of local. I think the benefits of local outweigh a little bit of chemical use. We're organic on this farm. We grow tons of different stuff. We have never had a situation where we felt we needed to use a chemical. We've been fine. And I think that's the general conclusion of most smaller, diversified operations. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're doing it in one of the harder places. You know, certainly this is not a great place to grow vegetables. It snowed yesterday, it was May 10th. You know, it's a terrible place to grow vegetables. So if you can make a living growing and selling vegetables year-round here, in a town of 600 people, with a terrible climate, anywhere else you can certainly do it.